Broadcasting from the Symphony studio in Marietta, Georgia, it's time for the Technology Harmony podcast, brought to you by Symphony Technology Solutions. Tune in every week as we spotlight the very best minds in our industry. Now, here are your hosts.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 13th episode of the Technology Harmony podcast, brought to you by Symphony Technology Solutions. I'm one of your hosts, Katie Galley, and as always, I am joined today with my co-host, Trey Gaskins. How are you doing, Trey?
I'm doing great, Katie. How are you?
I am doing awesome. Super excited to dive in with our guest today. Last week, we had the chance to interview Chris Andrews with JE Dunn, and today we get to speak with John with JE Dunn. So I'm super excited to dive in. In the Symphony studio with us today, we have the Senior Project Manager with JE Dunn, John Cooper. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing well. Eddie, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by and just sharing your story with us today.
Hey, no problem. Trey, how are you?
We're doing great, and I know you're on vacation today, so we appreciate you making the extra time, and we're going to be real efficient and let you get back to the beach.
Not a problem at all. Appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, so John, really thank you. And so just to kind of get the ball rolling and to know your background a little bit, John, can you tell us a little bit about your professional journey and how you got the job that you have today?
Yeah, so many moons ago, I got involved in the technology industry in Nashville, Tennessee, and I worked for a company there. And during my time there, we partnered with JE Dunn on projects, not only in Nashville, but across the country, for the better part of a decade. And when JE Dunn started the Smart Building Solutions Group, it was just a perfect fit for me, and so I came over to the GC side of the fence. And so now being senior project manager based out of Nashville, my primary role is oversight of operations of our Smart Building Solutions Group for the East region, as well as our National Healthcare Division. In addition to, the operations, I'm also heavily involved with the pre-construction side and the business development for our group. And so in each of my quote unquote cities, I have project managers that are, overseeing the day-to-day operations of projects as well as superintendents. So that's kind of what my day-to-day roles and responsibilities are.
And so, John, for you, you said it was kind of that perfect transition into smart building solutions. So can you talk about a little bit, what are smart building solutions and why was that a perfect role for you to transition into?
Yeah, it's kind of a long story, but I'll make it as short as I can. A few years back, JE Dunn, it all started with concrete, believe it or not. JE Dunn had a group of folks that were experts in concrete, but we were still hiring concrete companies to do our concrete work. And somebody said, you know what, why do we keep doing that when we have the expertise in-house to do that? And so we started doing our own concrete work. That moved over into carpentry. Did the same thing. We started hiring or started doing all the carpentry work ourselves. Somebody had the forethought to make the jump from concrete and carpentry to technology. And so while we are not part of the self-perform group, because we're not going to go out and we're not going to be cable pullers, we're not going to go out and do this sort of thing. What the Smart Building Solutions Group does is traditionally the low voltage scope has been left to manage by an owner or is given to an electrical contractor. And what was happening is there's always a scope gap. There's always busted budgets. Low voltage systems are always an afterthought, and it's, the last in, first out. And so forming this group, we were able to have those conversations sometimes years before they typically happened. And what we have found by doing that and by contracting that work directly with the fire alarm companies and directly with the BMS companies is that the coordination's better. We have true oversight and management of those systems from the top. And it kind of eliminates, the finger pointing, The little guys have a seat at the big boy table, for the lack of a better term. And it just helps everybody in the end. And it also saves money to the owner.
Mm-hmm. And so, John, why would you say, why would low voltage be an afterthought? And I mean, getting into this industry, why would you say that low voltage is considered sometimes an afterthought?
Traditionally, there's still a lot of, there's two schools of thought when it comes to technology. There's still the old hard superintendents that don't understand technology. They don't want to fool with it. They still think that low voltage is just picking up a phone and getting dial tone. And we've moved so far past that. And, there's as developers hire younger people, and they're more technology forward thinking, you've got to start talking about these systems a lot sooner than you typically would.
Right.
You've got to start planning integrations. You've got to start doing a lot of different things that you traditionally wouldn't do. Mm-hmm. And that's why having our group, we're, and I hate to use the word forcing, but we're forcing those conversations early. So we can, so one, the budget is right. And two, just that everything's planned and everything's put in place.
Yeah.
So John, you mentioned like smart building. What's your definition of a smart building these days?
Man, that's a big question. There are so many, one of the issues that I see, especially in the property space right now, is that there are so many solutions out there, but there's little to no integration between the systems. And that's a byproduct of no planning or conversations during the design phase. And so a smart building to me is, when I pull into the garage, obviously, there's a tag on my car that the gate reads and that that lets me in. When you get into the property, there's readers that, you use your phone. When you get into your unit, everything's just digitally operated. Your lights are controlled. Your air is controlled. There's just a number of different integrations. I mean, it's obviously a smart hospital is going to be different than a smart hotel. It's going to be different than a smart residential space. So, I mean, with the Internet of Things and everything that's out there, there's so many opportunities. And, and a smart building can be as smart or as, quote unquote dumb as you want it to be. It just really depends on, what the developer wants or what the technology that they're wanting. To me, smart means, integration with lighting control, integration with HVAC, an efficient building. You've got to gather that data. Obviously, you can gather all that data, but it's what you do with that data that makes the building smart. So if you're, when do you turn this air handler off, or when these lights go to a certain, to a certain dim or not? So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at that, Trey.
Sure. How about from an integrator standpoint, what kind of qualities are you looking for in an integrator? Does JE Dunn like to manage a whole lot of different integrators, or do you prefer to partner with one integrator that's got a lot of capabilities? There's seems to be not tension, but there's some people that are kind of picking one camp or the other. Where do you guys fit in?
Yeah, and that's quite honestly, Trey, our group is disrupting the process, and there's these large firms out there that are not real excited about what we're doing, and the reason being is we are vendor or manufacturer agnostic, and so what we want to do for the owner is to find systems that will best support their end need. What we don't want to do is hire an integrator that just wants to sell them more stuff.
Right.
And so, that's kind of what we're looking to do. We want integrators that are open to looking at the project holistically. And, giving them or giving the owner in the end, what they truly need and what they truly want, and not what they feel that the customer should need or should want. So, I mean, it's if there's an integrator that can provide, all of those solutions, obviously we would like to have one person do that. But what we don't want to do is, again, paint the owner into a corner where they're stuck with proprietary systems and they're stuck in service contracts they can't get out of and things of that nature. So we want to, to have, as open as the systems as we can, but still give them the integrations that are out there.
Gotcha. Well, we're all kind of working in a COVID world right now. Has the COVID crisis made you rethink anything in particular as it relates to smart buildings and how to create safer buildings by using technology?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Trey, touchless and hands-free. I mean, that seems to be what I've heard a lot of lately. And honestly, I think that's where we were headed, regardless of any medical advances that are made against COVID. I mean, that's where we're heading anyway. I mentioned it earlier, you've already got a Bluetooth card readers out there, that you integrate that with an auto operator at a door, and then you couple that with a reader in an elevator that's integrated with the control system that takes you to the floor you live on. The possibilities are really endless, but it all goes back to proper planning and having those conversations. One of the issues, or with the changes, I should say, over the past few years, is there seems to have been a race to make the latest and greatest solution for these properties. And the problem there is that developers now can search the internet and they can find their own solution, or they get inundated by sales teams and led to believe that all these systems work seamlessly together, when in fact they don't. And it all goes back to having discussions and proper planning during, the design phase of the project. I mean, I know in our projects with COVID, it's been a change. I wouldn't say a disruption, but we've had to change our process. I mean, even in our own office, just moving around the office, getting in and out and doing screening. I mean, it's a new world right now that we're in. It's a new normal, I guess I've heard of. But I don't think, there's once we get, we may never get past it, but once we get, acclimated to this new normal, we'll be fine. I mean, but the advances are out there. You got to talk about them. You got to talk about the auto operators and the smart elevators, and just got to talk through it and plan it.
How about things like COVID lighting? Is that something y'all have explored yet? So I've heard about it, but we haven't dug down deep into that. I mean, that was actually something that popped up on my radar a couple of weeks before I went on vacation. And so it's definitely something that I'm going to be looking into. I would welcome any information that you guys have dug up on that. Yeah, we just are exploring it ourselves, but we've had a couple clients ask for us to quote it, and looking into it. One of the systems we're looking at is PoE enabled, and so it's since it becomes a technology product, at that point.
Right.
But that's been something we've been asked a lot about, and then some of the COVID temperature reading cameras, we're playing with as well.
Yeah, and I've seen those. So on a couple of our, like I mentioned earlier, being a part of the healthcare division, there are a couple of hospitals that have implemented those cameras, where you walk up and it's on the wall. You stand in front of it, and it scans you. It gives your temperature, and it's a go or no go, basically. So I see a lot of that. I mean, I see. People don't, there's a lot of medical clinics out there. I mean, until something is, until we get some type of, I don't want to say cure or sort of vaccine, or just some type of medicinal advance against this virus. I mean, that's what we're going to see. It's going to be everywhere.
Right. This sounds mildly rhetorical. It's not intended to be of a question, but when you're in the project so early, which is great because technology is a lot of times an afterthought, but let's say you're getting into it, how do you deal with, your 2 years, you're 2 years early on a project and then technology changes so much over those 2 years? How do y'all deal with the changing technologies, even though you're trying to get on the front end of it? By the time you install it, it's already potentially either obsolete or it's, there's other advancements. How do you deal with that?
You have that conversation first. I mean, that is what we do. We talk about that, and we talk about that being, that is a major reason to get involved early, to say, hey, this is what we're looking at. Traditionally, this is what this cost. You may look at this type of percentage increase over the next few years. We don't know, but that's why we want to start talking about it, now. And with our group, we're researching, and we're on the front end of that, and we're looking at new technologies. And so when we're involved and on the quote unquote design team, we're bringing that stuff up. Hey, by the way, this came out. Hey, now we can do this. Hey, we can do this now. And we kind of just leave it up to the owner. If they want to continue down that road and add this new stuff or the new technology, it's priced and it's there for them, to decide. That's typically how we've done it. I mean, it's worked out pretty well. Most owners have a contingency or amount that they know, like with lighting fixtures, the cost may increase over, 2 years, or steel may go up. I mean, so they know that there's that chance out there. But again, just staying in, like one of the projects, for example, that we've got going on right now, we're having bi-weekly calls on IT related items, and we haven't even poured the last floor of concrete yet. And we're probably 2 months out from pouring the last floor of concrete. And we're having those calls just to keep everything out front. And it's a hotel. And so we're talking about, things. And some of those calls it's just a 5-minute check-in. Hey, don't have nothing, this meeting, so we're going to move on. And then some of those other calls are an hour long. Hey, I saw this technology. Can we talk about it? Hey, this came up, or so. I mean, that's how we do it, or that's how we stay in front of it.
Great. How about last question? What's the toughest part about your job?
Man, getting the toughest part about my job is. And I don't want to use the word resistance, but I'm going to use the word resistance, is you still get resistance externally from customers that just don't think that low voltage is important. They don't think that technology is, it's still somewhat an afterthought. They don't want to talk about it yet. Oh, that's cabling in the wall. We'll talk about that later. And that's probably the biggest challenge. And so one of the ways to combat that is, when you start looking at, and Trey, you'll know this, just the cost difference between Cat 6 and Cat 6A.
Right.
When you lay that dollar amount out in front of somebody on a big project, it gets their attention. And so, one of the challenges, or one of the ways to alleviate that is, talk about it, show them numbers. But I mean, that's probably the biggest challenge, is just still getting, and again, it goes back to what I said with the developers, and it's nothing against the old school of thought, but as these younger, more tech savvy developers come on board these companies, they understand, they get it. And they want to talk about it more, but that is probably the biggest challenge, just getting that conversation going.
Right. We've got a client. I try to give him the right attribution, but I don't know. I need to ask him if he created it or he came up with it. But at his firm, they go by MEPT, He is the technology is getting equal footing as MEP, and I was like, well, why don't you call it TEMP? At least
Right.
it's an acronym you can understand. But get technology out there in the front. But it's such an important thing that if you don't get on the front end of it, you can have a project go great and look awesome. And if doors aren't opening when they're supposed to, and the access control's not working, some of those technology elements can make the whole project, not look as great as it really is. So,
and door hardware, that's always a challenge.
Sure.
And that is something that our group, so just to touch on that for a minute, we live outside of traditional Division 27 and 28. We have gone back and we have gotten heavily involved in Division 8, Division 10, Division 23, Division 25, and 27 and 28, because door hardware is always, as everybody knows, is always an issue. But again, early planning and talking about it, we've been pretty successful on this hotel project of alleviating a lot of that real early right now. I mean, we're in good shape. I don't want to jinx anything, but I mean, the drawings are right, door hardware schedule's right, everything's right. So we'll see how it goes. But again, proper planning and early discussions.
Awesome.
Well, John, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, learn more about you and what you do, and learn more about JE Dunn, where might they do that?
They can email me at john.cooper@jedunn.com. It's john.cooper@jedunn.com, or just give me a call at 615-645-0296.
Thank you all for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To learn more about our guest and their company, check out the show notes for the relevant links. If you would like to learn more about us here at Symphony, of course, subscribe to our podcast on our YouTube channel, and don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook at Symphony Technology Solutions, and on Instagram at Symphony Tech Solutions. Here at Symphony, our ultimate goal is to make harmonious music out of all the technological noise. And we hope today's episode helped in doing just that. See you next time.